Mewtwo. This was supposed to be the most powerful Pokemon that has ever been created. Back in the day, if you were battling against your friends, if they brought Mewtwo, you were more so stressed out because you were like, oh, how am I going to handle this Pokemon if you were trying your best not to bring a legendary to the battle? However, in these future generations of the Pokemon franchise, the stages of power creep has caused Mewtwo to fall far down on the wayside in terms of matching up against the opponents. However, with the lore of the entire franchise, being that Mewtwo was created to be the most powerful Pokemon, in the anime, they are aware of all the different Pokemon of legend. So that causes us to wonder, if they created the most powerful Pokemon in the world, why does it not match up against the power of all the other legendary Pokemon? This is where I believe that the very rare item that was placed on Mewtwo from the very first movie is the specific item that is needed in order to make Mewtwo even better. And that is what we're here to do today. We are going to be discussing how we can potentially make Mewtwo a more powerful variant to reclaim his title as the strongest. What's going on, everyone? This is the Raikaze here. Like I just stated, this is what we are going to be discussing today, is how to make the Mewtwo a more powerful variant so it can basically match up against all of the different restricted legendary Pokemon, especially in the VGC format. Now, full disclaimer, this is going to be something that is going to be completely lore based and for me to just basically create something completely broken, because honestly, Mewtwo used to be broken. If somebody was to bring Mewtwo to a battle, it was going to be an uphill battle if you did not bring your own Mewtwo to face off against it. But of course, Gen 2 came along and then Tyranitar was going to be the one to actually take it out, or a Heracross if you were able to just basically be fast enough to use your Mega Horn. But then that's when Mewtwo just slowly started fading off on the wayside. Nowadays we have Lunala, we have the Calyrexes, we have the Miraidon, Koraidon. These types of Pokemon are just basically able to just dominate the metagame in the VGC format, and if you bring Mewtwo, you're just basically signing up to lose. But what if we were able to try to change Mewtwo's stats by not just simply changing the stats just off the bat, but what if we were able to give it a specific item that was going to unlock its ultimate form? Now, this is going to be very similar to, like, for example, the Palkia that's going to be holding like the lustrous globe to where it turns into its origin form. We have the Dialga that has the adamant crystal that also turns it into its origin form. We even have like the primal forms of the Groudon and Kyogre. We even have the Rayquaza that can turn into a mega evolution without having an item. So this is something very similar that Mewtwo should have, because even there was that one movie where Mewtwo, which should be a different type of Mewtwo than before, but it was able to mega evolve. But the fact is, Mewtwo was created, so how does Mewtwo have a mega evolution stone, two at that, if it was a created Pokemon? There shouldn't really be a mega evolution stone for this Pokemon. So that's where I think that Game Freak was like trying to say, oh, we're going to bring Mewtwo back, but the Mega Mewtwo X, yeah, that wasn't really that great anyway. And then the Mega Mewtwo Y, yeah, it was super fast, but at the same time, it still didn't have enough bulk to survive hits, and that caused trainers to choose other Mega Evolutions as opposed to Mewtwo Y. So I began to theorize, how can we make Mewtwo even more powerful? So I did some digging, and I found out that there was a very special item back in Heart Gold Soul Silver that you can unlock in an event. And this item is called the Berserk Gene. This item will turn Mewtwo into the form that was in the early part of the movie, where it was covered in all the different parts of armor that Giovanni placed on it. Though it changes appearance, it did not affect its abilities or its stats. So what I'm thinking of doing here today is turning Mewtwo into a state to where it's going to be basically broken. I want to make Mewtwo broken because that is what makes it Mewtwo. So let's go ahead and look at Pokemon Showdown, and I'm going to show you how this Berserk Gene could possibly make Mewtwo even more broken. So let's take a look. So here we are, we're looking at Mewtwo. I have Calyrex Shadow next to it just for we have a bit of like reference in terms of some of the stats, so we can actually see how broken we can make Mewtwo. So in looking at this, if we gave it the item called the Berserk Gene, what I'm thinking what it should do, as opposed to just changing its appearance, it should also change its base stats. And seeing how fast we've seen Mewtwo fly through the sky and the fact that it can have the same teleporting capabilities as Mew, we may as well say, hey, this Pokemon should in fact be faster than a Calyrex Shadow. Calyrex Shadow has a base speed of 150, so if we were to go into Mewtwo and say, hey, this Pokemon should be at least speed 160. Now, or we can just even break it even further and just go super overzealous and say this Pokemon should be at, over 200, just like a Regieleki, but But I would say, you know what, let's not go that far. Let's just say we want to break the Pokemon, but let's not make it stupid. Because, I mean, we can honestly just say, oh, we're just going to make all the stats for 999 or whatever like that. Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're going to say, let's make this Pokemon just balanced, but at the same time, a lot more menacing. So let's look at something on the damage calculator. That is absolutely hilarious. So this shows the fact that Mewtwo is not used, and it's saying there's a set that says it's getting Calyrex's coffee. What does this thing do? A nerve life orb. That's kind of hilarious. But we're going to go ahead and start changing its stats around. We are going to ensure that this Pokemon has a way to be faster than a Calyrex Shadow. So we're going to turn it into a Timid, and we are going to be at let's go 160. So we're going to be at 160. So this will allow Mewtwo to not even have to go up to 252 on its speed, and it will still be able to outpace that of a Calyrex Shadow. So one step of breaking complete. So with that being said, having 252 in its special attack and then it will be at 206, still not as powerful enough. So let's go ahead and break that even further. I think for Mewtwo, it should be at least 160 across the board, but let's take a look at a Calyrex Shadow. Calyrex Shadow has 165. Being the fact that it is a fused Pokemon, I think we're okay with that. And we can be at 160 here, and being at 160 of our own speed, we will be able to outpace that of the Calyrex Shadow and still do massive damage. So they will be required to go for a Focus Sash, because if we go for a Shadow Ball, then we can basically ruin its day. Now, special defense and defense. Let's see how we want to actually do this. When we're also thinking about the absolute base stat total of the Mewtwo, as opposed to also compare to some of these other restricted legendaries, I believe that Mewtwo should have a maximum base stat total of 720. So this is going to be matching that up like against Eternatus. It's also going to be along the lines of even Arceus. However, we're also going to be doing a few changes, because we're going to say, hey, when you place the Berserk gene on this Pokemon, it is going to alter its base stats to where it's going to affect its breakdown of how these stats are going. And we're basically going to say that the armor is going to cause Mewtwo to just focus purely on its psychic power, and it doesn't necessarily need anything in its attack. So what we're going to do is drop its attack down to 50. I know that sounds absurd, but we are going to basically try to use our stats exactly where they need to be. Mewtwo does not need to be a physical Pokemon if it's going to be holding the Berserk gene. It needs to use its psychic powers. That is what it's all about. Its HP, being the fact that with HP, that usually never changes, so we're not going to touch the HP. So let's say if we were at 720, and we're going to keep the HP where it's at, so we're at minus 106, so we're good with that. So we're down to 614 points remaining. We already said that with our speed, we're wanting to keep that 160, so we'll go with that. We have 454 points remaining, and then we're going to also subtract the 160 on that special attack. So that's another 160 there. We are down to 294 points remaining. Now, if we also subtract the 50 points from the attack, because it's going to have some attack regardless, so we'll subtract that, we have 244 points remaining. Now, currently, Mewtwo has 180 points in both its defenses combined, so that's 90 each. So that'll be 64 points remaining. So if we take the 64 and just divide it by 2, that's going to be 32 points each. So if we add that back in, so that's going to be 122 on each of those. So we'll bump those up. And here we have a very, very powerful Mewtwo. So now let's go ahead one more time and we'll take that total. You can go ahead and total that up as well. So we have the 106 plus the 50 plus the 122 plus the 160 plus 122 again plus another 160, and that should bring us to a total of 720, and that is going to be our new Mewtwo set. But we aren't done here. I said I wanted to make Mewtwo broken. So we still have a few more things that we need to do to actually make this Pokemon completely unstoppable. Even though the Berserk gene is going to be something that will change Mewtwo's appearance, it doesn't actually do anything different in terms of its stats or anything of the sort. So what I want the Berserk gene to do is, being the fact that it is a form of armor, I want it to copy something very similar to that of the Necrozma abilities, and that's going to be the Prism Armor. This is going to reduce damage that the Pokemon receives by 3/4. So basically a 25% reduction of attacks. Now this one is going to be super effective attacks. However, for Mewtwo, being the fact it's going to be the Berserk gene, we're going to have it do it on all incoming attacks. So Mewtwo with the Berserk gene is going to have reduced damage all across the board. Now, if you want, and you start going with, like, let's say a Calm Mind, if you wanted to do that, boom, you are going to be ultra mega tanky. You can even have the Iron Defense. I believe it knows Iron Defense. Can it learn? Oh no, it can't learn Iron Defense. I could have sworn it got some type of defensive move, but nonetheless, I mean, you can still do something to make this Pokemon just like super tanky. And another thing I want this Berserk gene to do is, being the fact that it is focusing on Mewtwo's psychic abilities, I'm going to say that this Pokemon is going to now also be able to carry another item at the same time. So with the Berserk gene, Mewtwo is going to basically change its form. Maybe you can use it like an item, like the fusion item, and it just turns into this form of Mewtwo. Then maybe like the item slot disappears, and then you can place a different item on it. And that will be something like, let's say if you wanted to put the leftovers, you have yourself the Ultra Defense Mewtwo as we have it there. Or you can even just say, hey, I'm going to give it, if like megas were allowed, you can do a mega evolution and then just transform Mewtwo. Now, I don't know how I would really do that in terms of the stat breakdown, so you probably don't want to do that. So this Mewtwo is going to be already broken. So mega evolution, we're not going to go that far. So nonetheless, we are saying, hey, we have this Mewtwo, we are going to transform it with the Berserk gene. It's going to have the ability, even if it's holding this item, if we do that, it's saying, hey, this Mewtwo is also going to be able to carry a secondary item because it's using its psychic ability. So obviously the item can just float around with it, so it's not going to matter. It is going to have the stat breakdown of the 160 in the speed, so it's going to be one of the fastest Pokemon once again. It's going to have great defenses. It doesn't need its attack power because it's focusing on the special attack, and also it's going to just be able to tank massive hits in addition, just because it's going to be basically a Prism Armor ability, but it's just going to be for all different incoming attacks.
We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokemon, and we succeeded.
So what do you guys think? Would you like to see Mewtwo make it back to the competitive scene and really try to dominate just the way it was supposed to be made in the past? Or would you just say, oh no, that's just a bit too much? Tell me in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to leave a like, share, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you can be there for the next video when they go live. But with that being said, this is going to be the Right Cosmic signing off. You all know what to do. You stay strong and you power on. We'll catch y'all later.